was at first thought that a Canadian flight attendant was patient 0, and his name was Eitan Degas, I think. And they thought that he was the one that brought HIV here, when we found out that wasn't true later on. Actually, there was a young man, and I believe he's African American or Caribbean American, and I believe he's in Missouri. And this young man was very, very young. He passed away. He kept getting viruses and illnesses, and the doctors had no idea what to do. They were like, what the heck? And they found out that when thank goodness they took tissue samples, and they found the virus in his system. And this is back in 1960 something.
My understanding of the HIV virus was actually discovered back in the late 60s, early 70s, between 1969 and 1971.
For me, I remember, like, I grew up in the 80s, and I remember hearing about it in the 80s, you know, in the newspapers, and it was this horrendous disease that caused all these horrible side effects. And obviously this was true. This was what was happening to people dying of AIDS in the 80s. I know it started well, there was a big influx of it in San Francisco and New York in the 80s, and then in Paris as well, I think.
What's interesting is we think of HIV as being something that just came up recently, like in the in the 80s but it's been around for years and years and years. So it's that's also fascinating to me, that it's just been in our consciousness for the last 30 or so years.
The issue: who really discovered the AIDS virus, and did the Americans steal the credit from the French? No one disputes that researchers at the Pasteur Institute discovered a virus 3 years ago, but did they know what they had? Whatever they had, they let scientists at the National Institutes of Health have a sample for study, and shortly after that, the Americans held a press conference.
The probable cause of AIDS has been found.
That announcement infuriated the French, who say they had already found the cause of AIDS.
There was no press, there was no people. We did not announce that we find the virus, we are working.
The French are so mad that they are now suing the U.S. government for patent rights to the AIDS blood test. Their Madison Avenue public relations firm and their New York lawyer say the Americans couldn't have developed the test without the virus the French lent them.
They simply studied it, concluded we were correct, renamed it, and claimed it as their own.
As it stands, revenue from the sale of the AIDS blood test, about $2 million a year, heads right to the U.S. Treasury. But by 1988, that's expected to be $10 million, and the French would like to see some of it head right to them.
I think it was in Copenhagen where they finally said, oh, there's a new virus. And it came here, and then also in Africa, there's the hunters theory where the people were hunting monkeys and cutting them up with their machetes or their knives, and they cut themselves at the same time as trying to cut the monkey, and that's how it was transmitted to humans.
See, I heard that chimpanzee thing, you know, but yeah, so I don't know. I'm a bit like that about the chimpanzee story, you know.
There's a lot of different theories. There's that man-made theory that HIV was made by scientists in a lab to kill black and gay people. And I'm like, well, I'm black and gay, so damn. But you know, there's plenty of theories of how I did get here.
One of the reasons that we're here today is because HIV and AIDS have ravaged the community. That too many people have gotten sick, too many children have gotten sick. So one of the things that we're here in front of this band to do today is my wife and I are going to get tested for HIV/AIDS. Because if you know your status, then you can prevent illness. You can prevent passing it to your children and to your families, and we can make everybody have healthier, happier lives. So I just want everybody to remember that if a U.S. Senator from the United States can get tested, and his wife can get tested, then everybody in this crowd can get tested.
HIV/AIDS makes no distinction and knows no borders. The message I gave to the people of Kenya 3 years ago rings just as true for us here in the United States today. Get tested. By knowing your HIV status, you can take control not only of your own health, but the health of those around you. Thanks for watching.
The president wants AIDS tests for up to 50 million Americans a year. All marriage license applicants, federal prisoners, those seeking treatment for sexually transmitted diseases or drug abuse, and Veterans Hospital patients. Anticipating a hostile reaction, Mr. Reagan took pains to explain his decision.
AIDS is surreptitiously spreading throughout our population, and yet we have no accurate measure of its scope. It's time we knew exactly what we were facing.
When I was doing my one-man show here, it was 2009, 2010, so it was when the ban was in place. So I had to bring all my meds in vitamin bottles. I was so scared. I looked online and spoke to HIV charities in the UK and said, what do I do? And not to say that they advised me to do that. It was actually really, mentally and emotionally, it was really difficult because, as you say, I wasn't smuggling drugs to sell, smuggling drugs to keep me alive while I was here. And it was just really, it was emotionally, I think it broke my heart in a way, because I was like that, why am I having to do this? Because these are just my pills to keep me going. It was like vitamin C tablets, so I had to take all those out of the bottle, put all my HIV meds in the bottle, and just hope that that customs didn't check them, and say what are these pills don't match up to what's in the bottle, but it was really scary for me, because I was coming through customs, I was like sweating, thinking this could be, me getting deported.
I've also asked HHS to add the AIDS virus to the list of contagious diseases for which immigrants and aliens seeking permanent residence in the United States can be denied entry.
It wasn't across the board ban. It was it was more other people coming into this country than it was us leaving. I think, as far as what I remember.
I was pissed. I was like, are you serious? This doesn't make any fucking sense. I mean, it's almost like branding somebody, saying, okay, you're HIV positive, you can't go anywhere. So why would we let you in our country? It's sad. And I was like, I was so pissed off about it. I just was like, a travel ban? I'm on a travel ban. Like, I can't, if you really sit there and think about it, like, somebody's banning me because I have HIV.
And the ban was actually lifted on the night that I left New York in 2010, when I was at the airport, and one of my friends phoned me and she said, you've got to look at the news, and Obama had just lifted the ban, which was amazing. It was, I kind of think that's what talking about it, can do.
22 years ago, in a decision rooted in fear rather than fact, the United States instituted a travel ban on entry into the country for people living with HIV/AIDS. Now, we talk about reducing the stigma of this disease, yet we've treated a visitor living with it as a threat. We lead the world when it comes to helping stem the AIDS pandemic, yet we are one of only a dozen countries that still bar people from HIV from entering our own country. If we want to be the global leader in combating HIV/AIDS, we need to act like it. And that's why on Monday, my administration will publish a final rule that eliminates the travel ban, effective just after the new year. Congress and President Bush began this process last year, and they ought to be commended for it. We are finishing the job. It's a step that will encourage people to get tested and get treatment. It's a step that will keep families together, and it's a step that will save lives.
I've never been discriminated against, like, in my face, by any policy, because I was born after the Civil Rights Movement. But the only thing about it is I've been discriminated against because I'm gay and I have HIV. And I'm like, wow, here we go. So I can't get married, I can't go on a travel ban, I can't go anywhere. When is this shit gonna let up? And we got the right to marry, and the ban was lifted. So as of right now, I pretty much feel like I have the rights that I need, and I'm good. But I was pissed when it happened.
But it goes to like back to when I was talking about stigma, and what people think of when they think of HIV. One of the things that I've been fighting about is that we have this collective social PTSD, this big scar about what we think of with HIV because of the 80s and 90s when people were just ravaged from the disease and had Kaposi's sarcoma and looked like Holocaust victims, and I mean it was so devastating that it's hard to get people to change their minds about what HIV looks like in a modern world when those images are so vivid still in our memories. And so those kinds of policies, even though they're outdated and old-fashioned, people still think they're important, and that's why it's so hard to get policies like a travel ban or HIV criminalization or anything like that to change, because people are still so frightened from 30 years ago.
Whatever promise the AIDS drug holds, the disease itself presents a clear and present danger to humanity. Nowhere is the toll more widespread than in some African nations. In Uganda, there are sights of despair reminiscent of the vivid pictures from the famine in Ethiopia. CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer in Washington narrates these exclusive pictures from Uganda.
To keep him here. The baby in this Ugandan hospital is dying of AIDS and crying out for help. So too is much of Africa.
Many people are going to die. And within 2 years, I think the area will be a desert as far as I can see.
These are the first pictures to show the devastation of AIDS in Central Africa, where it is rampaging through the general population, striking men and women alike, where millions of people are believed infected, but where governments in the past downplayed it.
I get emails from people from Africa a lot, and like they're struggling because they don't have enough money. The country doesn't have enough money to put into HIV medication.
I think it's terrible. Especially because we're such a rich country, like we should be helping more people. Unfortunately, our current leadership doesn't kind of believe that.
I think it's shocking. I think we all have the right to be looked after medically. I think people email me from Jamaica and the Philippines, talking about the fact that how difficult it is for them to get their meds and see a practitioner and things like that. So I'm very aware of their stories and what they're going through, and I just think it's crazy.
Here, AIDS is called slim disease.
This area is largely affected by that traces of slim. We are in hundreds of them.
I think there's so many barriers to getting medications in other countries, in this country too, but we're talking about other countries. Besides poverty and actual access to care, like actual physical access, there's also a lot of social barriers to getting medications or wanting to seek treatment or anything like that, wanting to be tested. And I think the more outreach we can do, it's our responsibility as people living with HIV to use our big mouths and to continue telling people about HIV and that HIV exists and that we need to continue all the programs and grow all the programs that we have currently and abroad.
When I did my dissertation on PrEP, one of my chairs was from Africa. And he said, I'd like you to call it PrEP medicine. I'm like, that's not what it's called. It's not called PrEP medicine. You're using that because in your country, that's what they call it. So because they want to take the stigma off of using PrEP, they call it PrEP medicine. So it's like, oh, it's a medicine. So you're not using it just for sex, it's a medicine. So they said, oh, you should call it PrEP medicine because it is a medicine, it's a pill. So for them in that country, the stigma is erased because they call it a medicine.
Here's the thing about religion and modern medicine. Yes, God does exist. Yes, God does do all sorts of miracles. A few things that God did give us as humans He gave us common sense. He also gave us these medications to use. Otherwise, they would have never became into creation. So if you're waiting for God to send you this thunderbolt lifeboat to claim that you're healed, make sure you recognize what He's actually sending you instead of just waiting.
I have seen marijuana, obviously, it does help people with epilepsy or seizures or things like that. So it does have, you know, an effect medically. But it does do something for people. It is it does definitely relieve people's pain and stress in other diseases. So I wouldn't say that it couldn't help people with HIV as well.
I think it can help a lot of people. Certainly not everybody across the board, but everything is not for everybody. But I think it could help with people who are suffering with having problems being hungry. It certainly helps with that, and I think with depression. And there's a host of things that THC is good for.
Oh yeah, marijuana always helps.
Somewhat. I think it helps. I mean, hey, if I could I probably could get medicinal marijuana if I wanted to. I think that if, you know, marijuana has certain properties, and it's holistic. There is synthetic marijuana out there, which is awful, but I think that when you get marijuana at its purest from the ground, then that does have healing properties that you can use, and I do feel that people with HIV and AIDS should be able to use it.
Clinical improvisation provides children with a safe, non-verbal means of release. Watch Freddie musically release his pain and creatively channel his anger through the cymbal playing.
As we've seen this young boy being able to release his pain behaviorally through some action of his own.
Well, I was pretty carefree in my 20s, and I was seeing a guy, but he wasn't the only guy I was seeing. But I didn't know that he had HIV, and I was pretty young and naive. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that he was the one who infected me. And I've learned now that now is not the time to place blame, because if you place blame on people, all you're doing is stigmatizing them and then making people fear them, which is HIV stigma, and that doesn't help anyone. I'd rather place the blame on the virus. Like, why is the virus here in the first place? And why did it kill so many people? So, that's how I got infected.
Years ago in my mid-20s, when I contacted HIV, essentially, I was working, I was quite successful. I was working for a telecom. I went to a nightclub because I had gone a couple of years without dating, so I went to a nightclub and met a guy, and he lived in my hometown, so it was really nice to meet somebody from back home, and we hit it off for a weekend. This was in 1998 when we decided to stop using condoms. I was actually taking a shower, and he joined me in that shower, and I grabbed the condom from off the windowsill, and he politely took the condom away from me, you know, telling me that he was negative, that he was safe, and I believed him. And from that point on, for the duration of that weekend, we had sex unprotected. He finally confessed and told me the truth. He pulled out, as I was getting myself dressed, he pulled out this huge folder, manila envelope folder. And I asked him, I said, why didn't you tell me the truth when I asked you? He said, because you're a nice guy and I don't want to die alone, so I chose you to be with me forever. What if I wanted kids? What if at some point my life changed? You know, nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to die early. You've taken choices away from me. He believed that God had miraculously touched him and healed him without any medications, without any assistance. He died 3 years later.
I remember feeling like there was a heavy, heavy weight on the back of my head, and it felt like, you know, my head was being pushed down like that. I was sitting on a bar stool, so all I could see were my boots. But there are three things that I remember clearly. They are seeing a guy's shoes in between mine, the strong smell of aftershave, and a guy's voice saying to me, "Do you need some fresh air, mate?" When I woke up, I felt sick. I was shaking, I was sweating, I just felt horrendous. And I looked around me and realised I was in my apartment. I went to get up to have a shower, and when I went to stand, my legs completely gave way. I couldn't put any weight on them at all. I kicked off my boots and started to get undressed to have a shower. As my jeans fell to the floor, I noticed that they were covered in blood. My underwear was covered in blood, and the backs of my legs were covered in blood. And I collapsed again, on the floor, in a heap, just saying, "No, God, please, no, God, how can that have happened? If that had happened, I would have remembered." And my mind was literally spinning like that. And then I know what they tell you. I know what they say, don't wash away evidence. I felt like somebody had opened a bottle of acid, poured it all over my body, and the skin was literally falling off my bones. After 40 minutes, I got out of the shower, called the hospital, they called the police. Police came, picked me up, took my clothes for evidence, questioned me, did blood tests, did physical examinations. All this stuff was going on, and to be honest, I didn't really take any of it in until a couple of hours later. A doctor came in with a policeman, and he said, "Stephen, from the blood work we did, we have found that you have Rohypnol in your blood." Rohypnol was the date rape drug at the time. He also said, "From the physical evidence, we can tell that you've been raped." This was 6 months later, but I thought, you know, I need to get this done, then I can go and finish and put this behind me. Went to the hospital, had the blood test done, was told to come back in an hour. In an hour I went back into the doctor's office, and she sat down with me and just said, "Stephen, I'm so sorry. The person that raped you was HIV positive, and you now too have HIV."
I was diagnosed in 2003. So I've had it for almost 15 years, or at least 15 years that I know of.
Right now my regimen is, well, for just HIV, my regimen is Tivicay and Descovy. Tivicay and Descovy, they're about 3, I think they're 3 together, maybe 3 or 4 together.
I take 2 pills. I take nevarapine and Kyvexa. So it kind of, I was on 1 pill at the beginning, but they had to break that down into 2 pills. So, and I take them at night time.
Well, I take, the only HIV medication I take is Triumeq, and it's I think it's 3 medications tri. Oh, that makes sense. So it's 3 medications in one, and for me it has very little side effect. And then I take some other pills for other allergies. And
I take Advocacy, which is just 1 pill a day, and it's really small, and it definitely, I mean, it's just 1 pill a day. I mean, I remember taking 4 pills a day, and it's just 1 pop-in pill. Make sure you take your food with it and you're good.
My family and friends don't treat me any different. They still treat me like the crazy person that I am, I guess. It's kind of interesting. Someone asked me recently, and it comes up often when you're in a group of people with HIV, that they ask you, like, what was it like telling your family? Well, my family knew I had HIV before I did, because I was really sick. When I got diagnosed, I was taken to the hospital and I was intubated and put in a drug-induced coma for 3 weeks because I was so sick. And when I woke up, by that time my family had all been told by the doctors, because my family had to make decisions for me. So that was really weird, like that my family knew before I did, and then my friends just always treated me like me. So I've been really lucky.
No, my friends or my chosen family, they are very aware of my status because I no longer hide it. I'm not a bitch for stigma anymore.
When my mother found out, it was kind of horrible. My mom found out through a family friend or a family member, and my family member, who I thought was, who I thought was cool, that could hold a secret from me, told their mother, who then told my mother, and then she told everybody else, and they called me, and they were all crying, and like, oh my God, Justin has AIDS. And my brother got on the phone, he goes, Justin, do you have AIDS? I said, no, I don't. No, Justin, seriously. I'm like, no, I don't have AIDS. And they're like, do you have HIV? And I'm like, fuck. Yes, I have HIV.
My family found out in error. I say in error and not by accident, on purpose. My family found out in error because my cardiac doctor, when I had my sister to come with me to one of the appointments, and my doctor did not obey the HIPAA laws. He just automatically gave my sister the results without asking me. But by that time I was already adjusted to telling people my status. I just hadn't told my family. So essentially he did me a favor by breaking the law. No, I did not report him.
And they used to ask me questions because they were curious, as anybody is who doesn't really know much about HIV. One of my cousins actually said, well, how long did the doctor give you? And I'm like, I don't know, how long did the doctor give you? He's like, well, I don't have HIV. I'm like, I know, but you could get hit by a bus. You could get sepsis and die. HIV is not that kind of disease anymore. So they really weren't that educated. All they knew was what they saw in the 80s. So I had to re-educate them and say, okay, they're like, what's your cocktail like? And we don't even call it cocktails anymore. And I'm like, no, it's just this 1 pill. I just have to take this 1 pill. Typical of my dad, when he found out. Well, you gotta still get up in the morning, brush your teeth, and blah, blah, blah. So if you need me, I'm here. Thanks, Dad. Okay, cool. Well, I'll talk to you later. Love you. Bye. Love you. I mean, I was like, shit, he took that well. But I know with my dad, it's like, probably be strong in the face of his son that needs him to be strong with him, and then maybe cry later. My mother was probably the most worrisome out of everybody. It took her a while to understand that you can't treat Justin any different than you would treat any of your other sons just because he has HIV. So she educated herself about it, and I educated her about it. But it took my mother, it took her like a good 6 months to like really kind of grab onto the fact that her son has HIV and there's nothing she can do. She can't protect me. I'm an adult, I make my own decisions. And it took her that long to start asking me questions and be comfortable with asking me questions and not think that a question is too personal for me. I said, Mom, you can ask me any question in the book because I know that you need the answer, and I know that it's going to lay on your head that you don't know this.
My family haven't been in my life, so that kind of, you know, pushes them out of that question. Friends did at first. Some friends did. Definitely. It was a really big thing 10 years ago when I came out having HIV. So some friends did, but the friends in my life now, no, they're great. You know, they're really good about it.
Well, as much as I'd like to say I don't really have any side effects, but there are some. When you're on medication, you can't drink as much as you used to because you're affecting your liver and your kidneys and everything else like that. Your body wasn't meant to be medicated every single day of your life. It wasn't. It's just not.
The medications also have a big part in what occurs with your body. These antiretrovirals are made in a lab. They're chemically created. They have an adverse effect on your body. So while they may be treating or keeping HIV at bay or keeping it dormant, it's causing an effect with your kidneys, or it's causing an effect with your heart, or something else that may be latent within your body's family history. Because HIV goes all the way down to the level of DNA. Something might be dormant in your DNA that it's going to activate. So if this person, whoever it was, might have had multiple sclerosis, chances are your numbers are pretty great that you're going to have multiple sclerosis, and it's going to be activated because of those medications that you're taking. It's not necessarily HIV's fault. It's HIV's fault that you're having to take the medicines, but it's also the medicines that are making these adverse effects on your body.
For me, the side effect was when I first went onto meds, I became very unwell, just very, I couldn't stand up. Every time I stood up, I collapsed. I was very nauseous. I had all those problems at first. Then I got changed onto a different drug and all that went away. So really, for me, I feel very lucky that I don't really have any side effects from HIV. I tend to get tired and I sometimes have night sweats, but they're the only things really that I can say, I can, put towards, that they've come from HIV symptoms.
I do get pains in my stomach sometimes, but I know that usually if I drink a lot of water, it goes away. I know that I try to take my medication in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, because to me it's like if it makes me tired, I will never feel it because I'll be sleeping. So it'll be my body's time to recharge and do whatever it needs to do. I know that the first medication that I was on, Rayatez, Truvada, and Norvir, like I said, it made my eyes yellow. I had jaundice. It was just awful. It was really, really bad. But I know that compared to the cocktails or AZT in the 80s, that's nothing compared to what they had to go through.
I think the worst side effect that I had from the medicine, which at the time I just started Advocacy and Sestiva, and the worst side effect that I had at the beginning of taking those drugs, my body was completely paralyzed. The only thing that I could move were my fingers and my head. Nothing else moved. So imagine you're waking up in the middle of the night and your body does not work because of the drugs that are supposed to save your life.
It's a weird thing. Medications, sometimes having to take a medication makes you feel sicker. So that's just a weird mind fuck. But I also have had several secondary conditions to HIV. I've had 2 hip replacements because I had avascular necrosis where my bones started to die. And so I've got 2 metal hips. I also have nerve damage in my feet. That's HIV related, which is really fun. In fact, I broke a toe and I didn't know I broke a toe until it was like months later. And so now I have a toe that's kind of gnarly and gross. But I couldn't feel it. So that's weird to have nerve damage, and sometimes it's painful to walk, depending on the shoes that I'm wearing and stuff. So that's weird. I had my first hip replacement about 7 years ago. So the condition started 8 or 9 years ago when I started feeling there was something wrong with my hip. But I thought that I was a runner, and so I always thought that maybe I pulled a muscle or something because I didn't know what it was until I finally was in so much pain I went and saw a doctor. And then when I had the first hip replacement, they told me that they could see it starting on my other side too. So then like 3 years ago, I think I had this other one done. And they also told me that I'm going to have them both re-replaced eventually because they're not built to last, and I'm so young that they're going to have to probably redo it. And the foot stuff started, I went and saw a neurologist about a different issue, and he was just doing a bunch of tests to check on everything. And at one point, this was the test he did. He goes, I was sitting on the doctor table, and he goes, close your eyes. Now, am I pushing your feet down or up? And I said, you're not pushing my feet at all. And I opened my eyes and my feet were all the way down. But I couldn't feel the difference.
I have a family history of cardiac issues on my father's side of the family and high blood pressure on my mother's side of the family. But for me to have had my first heart attack at 30, yeah, that was brought on by the HIV. Well, this is the defibrillator. This is it's attached to my heart, but this is some people get it confused and think it's a pacemaker. This is not a pacemaker. Pacemakers are actually smaller. Pacemakers actually look like a small button. You can barely see it. This is like a clamshell cell phone. I used to tell people, because I found the humor in it, I used to tell people when they ask me, what is that? I say, it's a cell phone. And they look at me like, I say, yeah, it's a cell phone. I was practicing my gag reflex and it got stuck. So that's where it sits. They actually believe it. So let's see. I beat shingles. I beat something that was unknown that was happening to my eyes. I've had 3 heart attacks. One was near fatal. And I've overcome at least 15 different surgeries on my arterial walls. So yeah, people are living longer.
Yeah, people are living longer now. Obviously, it's when you look back to the 80s and what was happening then, I think they gave people 5 years maximum once they'd been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS. So now, as somebody that has HIV, I'm told that I will have a normal, life expectancy. So people are, yeah.
They're saying that people who are on successful treatment with HIV have the chance to live a normal lifespan as anybody else. Although I will say this caveat about that, we're the first generation who's been on these medications, and so they really don't know how long they're going to work. They really don't know the long-term side effects because we're the guinea pigs. But so far, it's looking like because our health, if we're on successful treatment, our health seems to be sustainable. So it seems like we're gonna have a normal life. I'm around for a while, y'all.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, back in the 80s it was a death sentence. Like you were dead within a year or even some months, or even like, you know, they gave you a life expectancy of like 5 years or so. And now people with HIV are living just as long as people without HIV. As long as they're on medication, as long as they stay compliant with their medication, people with HIV can live just as long as people without HIV.
This set of twins is the latest addition to the family of Assunta Wagura, a woman who has lived with HIV for 26 years now and is edging closer to her jubilee year.
They were telling me because of my age, I can't get healthy children, and because of HIV status, it's putting the children at risk. But I think it's misinformation. The people assume that if you're HIV positive, you must get children who are HIV positive. But I have worked in HIV for long, and I know with the right medication and the right prophylaxis, you can get children who are free from HIV. And through the program of prevention of mother to child, I thought I'm going to get HIV-free babies.
Doctors warn that HIV could be transmitted through body fluids, including blood and breast milk. But at the same time, they want mothers to breastfeed their babies exclusively for the first 6 months. Does Assunta breastfeed?
I'm not breastfeeding. For reasons, I wouldn't want to take any chances. Even if there's 1% chance of infecting them, I wouldn't risk that 1%. So I do whatever is possible on my part to prevent any transmission from myself to the babies, including breastfeeding, which I can't do. So I'm feeding them on formula milk.
Assunta's achievement is no mean feat. People living with HIV who had lost hope of ever having children of their own draw inspiration from her.
If a woman is pregnant, or if a woman gets pregnant, so long as she's doing her prenatal care and she's taking her antiretroviral regimen, the child is actually safe. The child will not be positive. The child would actually, you know, be born negative, as they should be.
The baby was born to an HIV-positive mother. The baby was on antiretroviral drugs for 15 months. And then at around that time, the mom just took her off of them. She stopped giving them and she stopped going back to the doctor. She was off the drugs for 8 to 10 months total. When they brought her back to the doctor around her 2nd birthday, there was no signs of HIV. The doctors in Mississippi couldn't find it. They brought in other doctors who couldn't find it. Now, what does this mean for other babies with HIV? Here's what the folks at Johns Hopkins have to say. They've been involved in this. They say it may help pave the way to eliminating HIV infection in children.
This has very important implications for pediatric HIV infection and the ability to achieve cure. So we think we should be able to replicate this.
In other words, maybe other babies can go on these drugs for a relatively short period of time and don't have to stay on them for life. Maybe they can just stay on them for a year, like this baby did. Now, this baby got high doses of 3 drugs right after birth, and they're saying that may be the way to go.
I know that there are ways that if you tell your doctor early enough, if you find out you're pregnant early enough, I know that there's medication that the female can take to not infect her unborn child. It's risky, but there are ways to not infect the child with HIV during the birthing process as well.
I would imagine that if the father is HIV positive and not on treatment, then there's a good likelihood that that baby will have HIV, but I don't know, I'm not a medical professional.
But I know that there are, women having babies, women that have got HIV now, having babies is a thing that is happening a lot more, and without the children getting HIV. But breastfeeding is the only thing I know, the only thing I know about.
Let me explain what this is. PrEP is a technique. It isn't a pill. It happens that you're taking one pill. It stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. That means what? You're taking something before you're exposed to it. a lot of people are on PrEP. And what it's done, it has decreased tremendously the number of new infection and the number of people who are becoming HIV positive. All these studies are showing that it's 97% effective, not 100%.
So basically, if somebody's on PrEP, let's say your boyfriend's on PrEP and you're positive, well, and you're undetectable. So you're positive and undetectable and your boyfriend's on PrEP. So you have sex without a condom, but that's still considered safer sex because he's on PrEP and you're undetectable. You're on your medication doing your thing, you're being compliant, he's taking PrEP, being compliant every day, taking his PrEP pill. So that's safer sex. And I practice safer sex.
Well, there's PrEP, which I don't know about here in the States, but in the UK has kind of really taken off in the last 12 months. You know, it's so there's PrEP, there's condoms, you know, so it's just being careful in that way, you know, and just, you know, using anything that you can use to not get infected.
To prevent it, the continued use of condoms showed a major decrease. With today's standards or today's availability with PrEP and condoms, that's doubly the case. Now, here's the thing about that, because I'm not a saint. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I use condoms, because I don't. But I also make sure that my partners are not, if I do not infect them, because I tell them my status up front, and I also, you know, give them all available information, like my CD4, how long what medications I'm on, how long I've been on these medications.
One of the negatives when PrEP came out was people said, well, now no one's going to practice safe sex.
And wear condoms.
Is that something that you've noticed? Is that a concern?
Yeah, absolutely. All the studies that were done were recommending safe sex. And even in those studies, they knew that that wasn't happening because people were coming down with STDs. I mean, the CDC a few months ago just came out saying, you know, we have an epidemic of syphilis and we have an epidemic of gonorrhea. So
Hep C.
Hepatitis C.
HPV.
All of these, all of the alphabet.
And also, if you are undetectable, like I am, if I ejaculate into someone, either male or female, the chances of them getting the virus is very, very, very low because I'm undetectable.
Well, if you're someone like me, I'll start with me. I have HIV, but I am on medication. I'm on successful treatment, and my viral load is undetectable. And so if your viral load is undetectable, then the risk of transference is negligible. It is practically zero. It is so small as to be non-important. Use condoms. Condoms are still effective. They're not 100% effective, but they're an effective tool. And, you know, using clean needles if you're an IV drug user and things like that. Then, you know, just making sure you know what kit you're using and all that kind of stuff.
Every single time I get an email that I use sometimes for my advice column, like, I've been infected with HIV, what do I do? Gotten emails from people as young as 15 years old being infected with HIV. So it's like, you know, so there's certain people that put themselves out there to be hurt, to take in that pain that other people feel, and they use that to help others as well. So I would have to say in my heart, yeah, I do feel pain. I feel pain whenever I get those emails, but it's something I feel like I have to do. I like virtual groups. I mean, like, so back in, like, you know, before social media, like in the 80s, they had these groups. There were people that had HIV, like, that they could come together with other people that had been infected with HIV and share their stories and share commonalities of the pain and you know, death, and it was very therapeutic. Now we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have all these other things like social media. So now we can actually go online and get in these groups by going to these discussion posts. I'm more involved in that Events, if anybody wants to call me and say, hey, would you mind speaking at so-and-so? Sure, no problem. Let me know when.
I was working in the UK with a charity called Youth Stop AIDS, and it's where young people who have AIDS or HIV are telling their stories. So I did an interview on their channel and interviewed somebody on my channel with them. And I'm on a couple of online forums and things, but that's about it.
Well, through some of my advocacy work and through my writing work with thebody.com, I have been to the U.S. Conference on AIDS several times. I've been to AIDS Watch 3 times. I also volunteer every year for AIDS Walk New York. I get up at like 3 in the morning and show up at 5 at Central Park and help sign in people for the AIDS Walk. I don't belong to any like social groups or support groups, although I used to, because I think it's really an important community and it's really helpful to a lot of people, especially those who are newly diagnosed or feel like they need a lot of support. But I'm not involved in them right now.
There's a lot of things that the leather community does and has done for people, not just people living with AIDS and HIV, but for the homeless and for the youth, for the hungry. The leather community actually gets overlooked because people associate, if you're wearing leather, you're into kinks and fetishes and BDSM and tie me up, tie me down, rope burn. No, it's more than that. You know, yes, those things are a part of the lifestyle, but that happens in your bedroom with you and whoever you're gonna be with. That's nobody's business.
Okay, so kissing somebody with HIV. I actually got this. I was at a bar and I met this guy and I was like, he's hot, and we kissed. And then his friend actually knew me from high school and it was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm here with my friend. I'm like, I just kissed him. He was like, you did? I'm like, yeah. Like, what's the problem? He's like, you have HIV though, right? I'm like, yeah. Isn't that like risky? And I'm like, no, unless I have a huge gash in my mouth and he has one too. And plus the likelihood of and I had to explain to him, I said, if we were kissing each other, the likelihood of of me transmitting HIV to him is highly unlikely. I would have to kiss him for enough saliva for a gallon to transmit HIV. So let me just spit in this gallon for you and then have him suck it down, and that's how he'll get transmitted HIV. He was like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, yeah, you need to educate yourself. And I was like, you're in a high risk group. You're a gay man. You really need to educate yourself on it.
Well, one myth for certain is that if you come in contact with someone with HIV, not necessarily with your clothes off, if you come in contact with someone with HIV, period, the myth is that they could easily spread it to you just from touching you, just from you sitting beside you, you know, just from you, you know, sharing, not even sharing a drink with, but you know, just in direct vicinity with someone with HIV. That's one of the biggest myths that I've ever came in contact with.
You know, I'm at a point now where, you know, my grief is really high, and the situation of 36 million people having AIDS is completely overwhelming to me. The fact that we do not have a cure and no one person has been saved, I mean, it's killing me.
So tell me how you doing. Why are you in here? With medication.
You can't get AIDS like this. You can't get AIDS from hugging and kissing.
Sharon has been our spokesperson, and she's extraordinary.
But if you can believe it or not, in the year 2018, it still exists. There are people that say, "Ooh, you have HIV. How dare you? You're so nasty." So there's a difference between nasty and clean now? Bitch, get the fuck out of here.
Today, still, the largest number of victims, 75%, are homosexuals, particularly those with many sexual partners. But several other groups have been affected as well. 14% are intravenous drug users. 5% are Haitian immigrants. 1% are hemophiliacs. And 6% fall into none of those categories. 94% of the victims are male. What about the Haitians?
Well, that's an interesting point. What we feel is that there's a ritualistic voodoo rite that we know that some Haitians do have, in where they come in contact with excrement, either blood or urine or feces of various animals that may transmit this unknown agent. Since coincidentally, we noticed the arrival of the Haitians with the arrival of the AIDS syndrome.
You know, it was one date in particular I had, and we got to my place, and he drove me there, and he said, so, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta tell you something before you think you wanna take me upstairs. And he said, what? I said, I'm HIV positive. He said, get the fuck out of my car. And I said, okay. He's like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? And I'm like, we haven't had sex. I don't really need to disclose that to you. I didn't say I wanted to have sex with you. You wanted to have sex with me. And so I realized after that, I just didn't want to go through that kind of rejection anymore. So I was like really upfront with it. And I said, I'm HIV positive. Do you want to date? Okay. I was very upfront with it. That's like one of the first things I tell somebody, that if they're interested, I'm positive. And if you don't like me, then fuck off. Because there's going to be someone that likes me, and he put a fucking ring on it. 2, actually.
Hook up? Me? I never. Wait, so I'm sorry, I should let you ask the question. Okay. Well, currently, any kind of dating site or anything like that I'm on, it's on my profile that I have HIV, because I don't, it's actually on my profile that I am undetectable, because I think that's an important distinction to say, like, you know, you can't get it from me. But there's my web series Merce, there's in episode 1, there's a scene where he goes on a date, and this actually happened to me. I went on a date with this guy, and that I had met out, and we had this fantastic time. We had a great conversation, a wonderful dinner. He was fantastic and charming and good looking and all of it. And then he said to me, I have to tell you that I'm a cancer survivor, and but I'm in remission right now, but I just wanted to let you know. And I thought, oh sweet, he'll totally understand. Like, this is going to be not a big deal to tell him I have HIV. And when I told him I had HIV,
I'm sure you'll understand.
he completely flipped out and said, like, I gotta go, and bailed. What? And that was the last I heard from him. So it's happened, and that was really hard. Like, wow, that it still is such a big deal to some people in the gay community, which I like, and someone who's like my age, that's also kind of weird to me, who should kind of know better, I would think.
I don't do blind dates. I always tell the person my status during the conversation phase. And if they want to meet in person, then I always meet, we meet somewhere outside.
It was somebody I was talking to online, and we'd been talking for a while, and it was getting to the point where we were going to meet up, and I just said, look, I need to tell you something, and then the whole conversation changed, the whole vibe of the conversation changed, and suddenly he was unavailable, and suddenly, and he didn't even say, oh, that's not cool with me. He just slowly, gradually disappeared into the woodwork. But it would have been nice, even if he'd said, look, I don't know enough about HIV, or it worries me, or at least I could have said, well, this is what this means, and this is what undetectable equals untransmittable means, and so, but yeah.
But it still happens, and I hear other people, I have other friends who've had it happen to them in more painful ways, more obnoxious ways on dating sites, and I think that, that's the stigma rearing its ugly head yet again.
When people with HIV are like, oh, I can't stand the rejection, I've been rejected so many times because I'm HIV positive. Bro, girl, move on, okay? This person obviously doesn't love you for you enough to stay with you. They obviously see the HIV before they see you as a person. So you don't even need to be with anybody like that. But there's going to be somebody out there that loves you for you. Somebody out there that loves you for you. You just have to keep going. It's gonna happen, so don't get discouraged. I didn't expect to go this far in school. I really wasn't expecting to get my doctorate degree, but with the support that I had around me, like my family, my friends, it was pretty easy to know where I wanted to go and where I should go in my schooling. So my dissertation is factors that influence men who have sex with men to be on PrEP or to get on PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis. And I knew that HIV and STDs were probably, or infectious disease was probably going to be where I needed to go. So that's why I got my doctorate in public health. I think that HIV, what it has done for me was give me a second lease on life and say, okay, you need to start taking care of yourself a lot better than you have been. And, I've gotten community service awards, I've been asked to speak at certain places, and, I took this on because I did have a calling, and I believe this is that. But there is more to me than HIV, but it has allowed me to have a voice. It has allowed me to be heard. Even though I wish it did not come into my life whatsoever and take my friends away, I'm doing this for them, for those that don't have a voice and those that were victims to HIV stigma and couldn't even come out of the HIV closet until it was too late.
It is something that, it's a very important part of my life. Having HIV I have a daily reminder I have to take every day. If that's the only thing that happens to me in my life is that I have to take that pill every day, well, that's a reminder that I have this virus. And I'm pretty active in the advocates community, and I write for an HIV website, and I have an HIV web series, so it's a big part of my life. But it's not the only part of my life, and it's not the first thing I say to people when I meet them. And certainly, there are other aspects to my life that are more important in defining me, like my sense of humor and my family, and Mexican American, and I'm a good friend, and I'm a good brother and a good son, and I'm sober, and so there's a lot of other things that define me that I think are more important than the definition of HIV. There's a big part of life besides HIV.
I think the thing is, although I talk about HIV on my channel and things like that and feel it's something that we need to keep talking about, it's not all that I'm about, if you know what I mean. So I kind of split my life up into, this is my time with HIV, this is my time talking about diabetes or having a transplant or talking about my family. It's all split up in a way, so I kind of make it so that I always put in between these different things in my life. I always make sure friends, going out and doing things that I enjoy, like theatre and that kind of thing, go and see movies. So I always make sure that they're kind of slotted in between so that it kind of keeps my life moving in a way that it isn't always focused on one thing, and especially it being HIV.
I sing because I grew up going to church and in a choir. I have a religious background. I'm not going to say I'm very religious, but I'm more religious than what people think I am. I love the arts. I love museums, and I love parks, and I love gardening. I actually I love trying to grow stuff, even though I don't have a green thumb, but it doesn't stop me from giving up. I'm a big dancer. I love to dance. I'm also big on my culinary skills. I love to cook.
I've decided to change my diet. It's a lot healthier than it was before. I think I was eating, when I was my son's age, which are 21 and 20 as of right now, I think I was at McDonald's like every day, eating what they call food, which is like cardboard. I was eating fast food every single day. I mean, it was easy, it was cheap, it was right next door. I didn't have money to go out and spend at a restaurant. It's harder to eat healthier because it's more expensive. It is. I mean, it's easier to eat fast food because it's less expensive, it's fast, it's easy, and you're not cooking anything. Cool, fast food, yes, all about it. Okay, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. Try to stay away from the fast food. Eat something a lot healthier. I wake up in the morning, I eat breakfast. I make myself eat breakfast, even though I fucking can't stand sitting down for breakfast, eating breakfast, because my mind goes a mile a minute. I'm like, okay, brush my teeth, take a shower, get dressed for work, want to get out, whatever. But I make myself eat breakfast. When I go to the office, I make myself eat breakfast. Make yourself eat breakfast. Even though thousands of us, billions of us, millions of us don't do that. So 3 meals a day, I'm gonna make sure you get that in there because your body needs that. Because your pill that you take every day, that you're supposed to be taking every day, needs calories, needs food to be absorbed into your body. Drinking, slow it down. Don't drink to excess. As we all know, drinking does lower inhibitions and possible spread of the virus too. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you protect everybody around you.
Moisturize. I believe in moisturizing. I try to not eat everything in sight, and that's difficult for me because I'm a person who likes more. I like more.
Watch your diet, because everything that's being marketed to us as a people is not good for us. You're not always getting the full truth.
But also, I believe in exercise. I started going to the gym and stuff when I was in my 20s, but when I was diagnosed with HIV, one of my doctors said, you know, exercise is one of the best things for you. It gets your blood moving, it helps the medications work better, it just helps you. And so every once in a while when I don't feel like going to the gym or I don't feel like getting out of bed, that kind of thought like, well, this is something you're doing for your health. And it also makes me feel better, like emotionally, to work out and move a muscle and change my thoughts.
I started going to the gym. When I walked into the gym, I weighed 137. Now I weigh 150, and I'm still kind of small, I think, whatever. But you know, my goal weight is 170. So I have a gym membership, and also I just started CrossFit, so we'll see how that goes. I start Monday. I'm a little scared because the coach is huge, so I'm scared. And I have weights down in the basement. You know, I have a bench and I have barbells and I have all this other stuff. So keeping active for me and forcing myself to go to the gym, because before HIV I never was like, I'm not going to the gym. Gym is crazy. I'm allergic to that gym because I sweat. That's why I'm allergic.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's always, you know, there's always exercise and eating well and, you know, limiting drink and drugs and things like that, you know, so it's all those usual things, because they do help, you know. It definitely makes a difference, so it's worth giving them a go.
I do go to the gym. It's therapeutic to go to the gym.
Perhaps not since Lou Gehrig announced that he had an incurable disease has there ever been such a stunning announcement from a sports figure. Magic Johnson, who was rumored to have had a terrible bout of the flu, he missed the first 3 games of the regular season, confirmed today that he has tested positive for the HIV virus. Here is some of what he had to say.
First of all, let me say good
get after late afternoon. Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today. I just want to make clear, first of all, that I do not have the AIDS disease, because I know a lot of you want to know that, but the HIV virus. My wife is fine, she's negative, so no problem with her. I plan on going on living for a long time.
The federal government and the CDC need to release all available information that they have, including the cures that they've been testing for the past 18 years.
It was cruel, it was frightening, it was relentless. And New York was ground zero of what would become known as the AIDS epidemic. And in those early years, it wasn't just a medical crisis. It was a social divide. It led to blame and anger, to tremendous loss and tremendous grief. Over those 35 years, 153,000 New Yorkers' lives were lost. 153,000. Many of our finest, many of our most accomplished, many of our most creative, youngest New Yorkers were lost.
Honestly, we need to put more money into HIV research. That's the only way as of right now. I mean, I'm sure there's a cure out there. It's already killed so many people I know, whether that be because they let the virus overtake them or because they decided that, oh, I don't have to worry about this right now, I can just take a couple pills and I'm good. And it really doesn't work that way. And I've lost really good friends like that.
HIV/AIDS became a lightning rod for stereotyping and for discrimination. It was used to fan the flames of fear and bigotry. It was a looking glass into the soul of society. And individual and collective reactions spoke volumes. Some buildings closed their doors, some families cast aside loved ones. President Reagan refused to acknowledge the disease for 3 years of his presidency. But then there were those who rose to the occasion, who opened their hearts and opened their minds and reached out to people.
I think just people understanding it, understanding what the disease is, how it's passed, how to prevent it, just a better understanding of HIV, and I mean an understanding for people all over the world who are still scared of it and still think of the stigma that, you know, was built up from years ago. I think there just needs to be a better understanding of HIV to help us prevent it.
Well, I think it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of education. It's amazing to me how many people don't think that HIV is over or think that it's not a big deal anymore, or don't know about the fact that if you're undetectable, that you're untransmittable. Like, people don't know that. There's a lot of people that don't know about PrEP, that there's a pill that an HIV negative person can take to keep them from getting HIV. And I think the biggest problem, the biggest barrier to ending AIDS is stigma. There's still such a big stigma to being a person living with HIV and what people think that is, and that you automatically are things that are perceived to be negative. You're automatically either a druggie or a homeless person, or you're, you know, a faggot, and, you know, that's still negative in a lot of different cultures to be gay. And so I think the stigmas and surrounding stigmas around HIV, those are the things that are really the killers, is the lack of education and the barriers keeping that education from happening.
We have made remarkable progress. You put education together with medical advancement, together with political activism, and that has been the real cocktail of success. This year is the first year that there have been no mother-to-newborn transmission. We're not home yet. The goal is to end the epidemic, and that's why New York was the first state to give it a date, a target date, 2020, as the date to end the AIDS epidemic, end it once and for all. That's success. In the heart of New York, we believe the strongest four-letter words are not hate but love, and not fear but hope. And we carry that banner high and proud. And that's why we will not stop fighting until this epidemic is over in 2020. Thank you and God bless you, and thank you for the honor.
A lot of things that we covered can also be found on Google. The origin of HIV can be found on Google. The green monkey can be found on Google. How to take care of your health, how to take better care of your health can be found on Google. Google it.
My experience of living with HIV has not been tragic. There have been some hard parts to get through, but it's not been an awful experience because my family, my friends, my life has been rich. And I believe in laughter. I believe in finding the humor in everything. So if you're looking for an off-color joke, call me.
You know, I just feel that it's important that we're talking about HIV and that we continue to talk about it, because there's so much that people still don't know or don't understand or choose to not know. And I just think, yeah, that's what, you know, your channel and my channel and, you know, are for, because it's talking about these subjects that nobody wants to talk about, you know. So
I am a black, gay, Jewish, HIV positive person. And I identify with all four of those. I'm definitely black. When I walk down the street, you're gonna see I'm black. You might see a switch in my step, so I might, oh, he might be a little gay. I might have a yarmulke on. Yeah, I'm Jew. You'll see that. You might not see that I'm HIV positive, but I'll let you know. And I've always believed in standing in my truth. And I've always believed in a man that stands in his truth is a strong man. And nothing can break him, as long as he stands in his truth.
This spirit of mine, this spirit of mine, this spirit of mine, this spirit of mine. You can say what you want to, and you can say what you will. This spirit of mine, not even HIV can kill. I've had side effects, ranging from shingles and night sweats too, and still here I stand, undefeated by you. I'll survive the 90s and AZT too. I'll never let this spirit be defeated by you. Past discrimination and prejudice too, this spirit of mine has seen me through. HIV, I dare you to come at me as you will, but this spirit of mine, not even you can keep. So say what you want to and think what you will. HIV, this spirit of mine and stick to your regimen too. In that way, HIV won't kill you. So say what you want to and act as you will, but HIV